Have you ever wondered why some details seem invisible but possess the power to completely transform a relationship? Why, despite all your attention, certain gestures don't evoke anything, while others seemingly simple touches ignite an ancient flame deep within a man's heart? The truth is that genuine desire doesn't originate on the surface. It lies hidden, buried beneath layers of routine, expectations, and unfulfilled hopes. And what most fail to realize is that the key to reigniting that desire lies in your ability to see beyond the obvious, to touch where others dare not venture, to perceive what's invisible to the naked eye. This is an invitation to discovery. A journey to learn how to touch with intention, with presence, and with deep respect for all that a man carries inside himself. It's not about superficial seduction, about using techniques or clichés that are already worn out. It's an ancient art that connects body, mind, and soul in a way few understand, an authentic connection that transforms, that recovers pure desire. Desire that doesn't need promises or promiscuity but is born from understanding the essence of what it means to truly see and be seen. Let me share a fundamental truth. Real desire doesn't spark out of nowhere. It is a seed that, when cultivated properly, blooms from the inside out. And this seed germinates in specific points many overlook, but that hold the power to create bridges of authenticity, respect, and passion that pass through the deepest layers of the soul. The more you learn to locate these invisible zones, the more you can build a connection that awakens a man's true nature beyond the physical into his emotional and spiritual core. The first area I want you to imagine and learn to touch is precisely the lower back, that zone which symbolically represents the weight of experiences, internal battles, and emotional burdens many carry unseen. Visualize a man before you, someone immersed in routine, exhausted, carrying the world on his shoulders, even if he appears to have everything under control. His armor is invisible, something we construct over years, a protective layer designed to shield vulnerability, and then you approach, without words, without blatant intentions, and gently place your hand on the curve of his lower back. It must be a firm gesture, but filled with respect, acknowledgement, and awareness. This zone, often considered just a support point, is actually the first portal for breaking down barriers and dissolving the emotional armor he's built. Because he may not realize it, but he feels deeply that someone notices his fatigue, his fragility. And that silent act of presence, that gesture that communicates, "I see you beyond your role," begins to dissolve his defenses. This isn't about sex, nor about seeking instant gratification. It's about inviting him to feel that someone genuinely cares, that someone recognizes his hidden struggles. That invisible connection is precisely what fuels true desire. Because, in essence, he longs to be seen not just as the provider, the protector, or the father, but as a whole man within a depths. If you want to truly transform a relationship, start with this zone. Think about the last time you touched someone with that level of authenticity, with full presence without expectations or ulterior motives, and felt the subtle shift in energy. That's the power of conscious touch. It speaks directly to the subconscious, activating stored memories of safety, care, and strength, elements that often go unnoticed but are deeply rooted in a man's being. Why does this method work? Because it activates what we might call invisible portals in the male psyche, points that carry confidence, vulnerability, unspoken needs, and a longing for authentic connection. When you sensitize these points, you're not just touching the skin, you're reaching into the core of the man's inner world, awakening memories and feelings that he might not even be aware of anymore. And before we move on to the next point, I want you to ask yourself, how many times have you touched someone with genuine intention and you sensed that it wasn't enough, that there was no spark, no change, no subtle acknowledgement in his breathing or his gaze? Many women and men think that desire is solely fueled by physical contact or alluring words. But the truth is, desire is born in small, meaningful gestures, quiet acts of attention that, when done with authenticity, can reignite feelings long thought lost. Once you understand the significance of these invisible zones and you dare to touch them consciously, you will begin to create something that many consider impossible, a connection that transcends the surface, that penetrates the soul and leaves an indelible mark. And this is where true transformation begins. If you're ready to explore deeper, each of these points will take you further into the realm of genuine emotional and spiritual connection. And by the end of this journey, you'll see that awakening. Desire isn't about shortcuts or manipulations. It's about a willingness to explore what's hidden, to honor the invisible, and to place value on the subtleties others dismiss. Now that you've begun to understand how a simple, conscious touch on the lower back can speak directly to a man's inner world, it's time to explore another vital zone, the inner part of the arm. This area, often overlooked in the rush of superficial seduction, is a powerful gateway to emotional and physical renewal. It's a place where vulnerability and strength intersect, where subtlety can carry an immense emotional charge. You see, desire isn't just about what appears on the surface. It's about what lies beneath, buried deep within the layers that most ignore. The inner part of the arm is a prime example of this, invisible to most, yet rich with potential for awakening what's been forgotten or suppressed. According to neuropsychology, it's packed with highly sensitive nerve endings. But beyond the physical, this area is deeply tied to emotional memory, a storage space of tenderness, past affection, and genuine care. Think of it as a forgotten library, full of precious books that hold the memories of first touches, sincere caresses, and moments of true connection. When you touch this zone with gentleness and firmness, you're not just making physical contact, you're activating archetypal patterns, those deep symbols that Jung described, those primal images that speak directly to our collective unconscious. You're telling him without words, I can touch you without expecting anything in return. You are deserving of genuine affection just because you are. How often does a mature man experience this kind of touch? Probably rarely. As they age, many men stop being caressed with curiosity or intention. They become objects of routine, tasks, or simply support figures. Their vulnerability is hidden behind masks of stoicism. That's why, when you intentionally make contact in this area, you're doing something revolutionary. You're reminding him of his right to feel, to be loved, to be seen outside the roles society assigned him. And here's the key: this act of touching is an act of memories. It's activating the deep neural pathways associated with genuine affection, those that hold the first tender caresses, the moments when love simply existed without conditions. When you gently place your hand on his inner arm, you're not seducing him like a reckless teenager. No, you're affirming his worth, his existence, his capacity to receive unconditional care. Imagine this scenario: he's sitting, perhaps working or lost in thought. Nothing particularly romantic, just a moment of ordinary life. Quietly, you approach and rest your hand on the inner part of his arm, not with force, but with calm presence. No rush, no expectations, just an intention to connect in the deepest way possible. And as you hold that space, you're sending a silent message to his subconscious, one that echoes, you are worthy of love just because you are. When you do this, you activate what Jung called primal archetypes, the universal symbols that connect us all at an unconscious level. It's a recognition of his core human nature, beyond roles and identities. It's a reminder that beneath the armor, beneath the stoicism, there's a vulnerable, deserving man waiting to be seen, appreciated, and touched with authenticity. The power of this gesture lays not in its intensity, but in its intention. It's not about seducing or impressing, but about planting a seed, an acknowledgement that he is more than his responsibilities, more than his scars, more than the persona he shows to the world. This touch says, you're enough, just as you are. Now, reflect for a moment. How many times has a woman caressed this area with such authentic intention? Much fewer than you might think, because most have been conditioned to chase the obvious, the face, the lips, the physical curves. But the real connector, the real awakener of desire, lives in the subtlety, the moment when attention shifts to what's overlooked yet most necessary. And here's a secret: this small act can be the beginning of a profound change in your relationship. It's not about doing something sexy, it's about doing something meaningful. About showing him that you see him as a whole person, not just an object of desire, but as a soul that longs to be truly touched. When you touch this area with authenticity, you activate dormant archetypes, the divine masculine, the protector, the child longing for love, and once that connection is made, desire begins to shift. It's not just physical attraction, it's a recognition of worth, of being valued without conditions. That's what awakens a desire that lasts, that deepens, that transforms. So remember, this area, the inner part of the arm, is not just tissue and nerve endings. It's a portal to the core of a man's being, a place where love, care, and genuine attention can awaken buried truths. And the beautiful part, it's subtle enough that only those willing to be present, to look below the surface, can truly access its power. Having learned to connect through the lower back and the inner part of the arm, it's time to venture into a much more delicate, yet extremely powerful area. The edge of the jaw. This spot is not just physically sensitive. It embodies the paradox of power and fragility, trust and surrender. Tapping into this zone requires courage, patience, and a keen awareness of the subtle energies at play. And when approached with authenticity, it becomes a portal where vulnerability transforms into surrender and desire deepens into something much more profound. Most people underestimate this area because they see it as just a physical joint, the place where the face meets the neck. But in truth, the edge of the jaw is a symbol of trust, of emotional closeness. It's an area that, when touched intentionally, whispers silently, "I'm so close I could hurt you, but I choose to protect you." It's a gesture that says, "You are safe with me." You don't have to prove anything. Imagine a moment in a calm conversation. You're sitting together, and instead of rushing or saying something romantic, you gently lean in and rest your finger lightly on the edge of his jaw. Hold that silent space. Look into his eyes, not with a flirtatious glance, but with genuine curiosity, patience, and reverence. Keep your gaze soft, your presence calm. Stay there for a few seconds, feeling the energy shift, feeling the trust that begins to rise. Then slowly, without any rush, remove your hand and resume the conversation, as if nothing happened. That simple gesture carries an immense message. It communicates, "I am here with you," not to take control or to manipulate, but to simply hold space for your vulnerability, because that's what the edge of the jaw represents, an area that is inherently vulnerable yet powerful. To touch it with intention is to acknowledge the delicate balance of strength and fragility within every man. It's an act of surrender that invites him to trust again, to let his guard down without fear of invasion or judgment. This gesture is almost like a dive into stillness. When done with patience, it teaches the man that desire isn't rooted in urgency or conquest, but in the silent strength of presence. It's about holding space for his hesitations, his scars, and his unspoken fears. This is how true intimacy begins to bloom, not through words or promises, but through subtle, meaningful actions that speak directly to the heart. And the beauty of this simple act, it's a silent declaration of power, not the power to dominate, but the power to protect, to honor, and to truly see. When you gently touch the edge of his jaw, you're not trying to accelerate the process of desire. Instead, you're creating a moment that might seem insignificant, but in reality, it's a turning point. Because in that pause, in that silence, allowed to speak volumes, an invitation for him to surrender. Think about what that means. Most women anticipate the perfect moment for a kiss, a touch, a word. But the women who truly awaken desire understand that real connection is created precisely in those understated moments, in the pauses where presence replaces performative actions. The touch on the jaw is not a technique, it's a declaration of trust. It's a gesture that says, "You can let go now. I hold space for you, just as you are," and if executed with genuine intention, it produces a ripple effect in his emotional landscape. He begins to feel safe enough to lower his barriers, to trust that he's not just being used or manipulated, but truly valued for his whole being. His mind, body, and soul respond. His breath becomes softer, his gaze steadier, his posture more relaxed. Resistance softens, walls crumble, and desire starts to reawaken from its dormant state. This is the power of subtle yet intentional touch. It's the silent language of vulnerability and surrender that awakens genuine desire, not the superficial, fleeting kind, but a deep, lasting flame. It's a reminder that true intimacy is built on moments of stillness, patience, and the recognition that both parties are sacred within that space. So, the next time you find yourself in a calm moment with him, remember this simple yet profound act. Gently rest your finger on his jaw. Look deeply into his eyes. Hold the silent space. Feel the energy shift. Because in that moment, you're not just touching his face, you're touching his essence, his deepest trust, and his capacity to surrender. And as that trust grows, so does the desire, not just for the moment, but for everything that can come from a connection rooted in vulnerability, authenticity, and respect. That's the real awakening of desire, the kind that lasts beyond fleeting passions and superficial appearances. It is a silent power that, once understood, transforms not just the relationship but the very way you see yourself and others in your life. We have traveled through powerful zones: the lower back, the inner part of the arm, and the edge of the jaw. Each area holds its own significance, its own capacity to awaken the depths of desire and vulnerability. Yet, there remains one last, almost sacred space, a portal that, when approached with reverence and patience, can unlock a level of connection. Beyond the physical and emotional, the scalp, this isn't about running your fingers through his hair in a frivolous or superficial way. It's about reaching the very root of his inner world, touching the core of his thoughts, his tensions, his doubts, and his truest essence. Jung would call this the point of contact with the masculine spirit, an area that symbolizes trust, spiritual alignment, and the profound willingness to connect deeply. Think about it, the scalp isn't just skin and bones. It's the point where the masculine energy, often hidden behind layers of stoicism, fear, or detachment, manifests at its deepest level. When you gently touch the scalp, you are, in essence, reaching into his inner sanctum, an act of devotion, patience, and silent communication. It's not an act of seduction, nor a superficial gesture. It's a sacred invitation to connect with his true self. Imagine a calm, quiet moment. You sit nearby in a space filled with genuine presence. Instead of rushing or trying to force a response, you softly steady your breath. Rest your palm lightly on the top of his head, or gently run your fingers through his hair slowly, intentionally, without expectation. Stay there. Look at him not as an object, but as a whole person. Observe how his body responds. Feel the energy beneath your fingertips. This act may seem innocent, even trivial, but it's one of the most powerful ways to foster a deep sense of trust. Because the scalp is intimately connected to the nervous system, loaded with tension, doubt, and a longing for trust. When you touch this area with complete presence, you're silently saying, "I see you at your most vulnerable. I honor your inner world." And here's the true significance. Most people avoid this kind of attention because it asks for patience. It asks you to be silent, to listen beyond words, to hold space for a man's inner fears and hopes. It demands a level of inner calm that most are unwilling to give. But when you do, the response is profound. The man begins to feel safe, not just physically, but spiritually. He begins to relax into the trust that you won't judge him, won't manipulate him, but will accept the full weight of his humanity. What happens when this trust is built? His entire energy shifts. His entire way of perceiving himself and his relationships begins to transform. Desire, rooted in trust and vulnerability, awakens at an unconscious level. It's no longer about superficial attraction or fleeting passion. It becomes a deep longing and instinctual hunger to connect with the essence of himself and the you that sees him fully. Most women miss this moment because they chase visible results or quick fixes to desire. But true desire, the kind that lasts and breathes, begins in the silent, sacred act of holding space. The scalp becomes a portal, a gateway to his deepest self. And as you gently hold that space, you're not just touching his head. You're touching his spirit. You're reminding him of the person he was before the world told him to hide his doubts, his fears, his longing for connection. In those quiet moments, something shifts beyond what words can describe. He begins to feel a flicker of something long forgotten, a sense that he can trust again, that he's enough, that he's seen in his totality. And that is the birthplace of desire, when the man's soul recognizes that someone truly cares, not just about the surface, but about the depths that often remain hidden. This is the sacred act of transformation, the patience to touch where most overlook, the willingness to be present in silence, and the courage to invoke trust in the most fragile corners of his being. Because, in truth, desire isn't merely about physical attraction. It's about spiritual and emotional recognition. It's about reactivating the ancient truth that we are all longing for someone to hold space for our deepest selves. And here's the beautiful part: once that connection is established, there's no going back. The desire that awakens from this place is enduring. It's rooted in authenticity, respect, and a profound understanding that the body and spirit are inseparable. So, the next time you are near him, with a calm heart and an open mind, remember this last step: gently, patiently touch the crown of his head, hold that silent space, and allow the energy of trust to unfold naturally. Feel the subtle shift that begins to ripple through his entire being. Witness how, in that moment, desire ceases to be superficial and awakens at the level of deepest truth. This is the ultimate act of love and strength, an act that transforms not only your relationship, but your understanding of yourself and what it truly means to connect. Desire, when rooted in this profound space, is no longer fleeting. It becomes an eternal flame, powerful, authentic, and unshakable. If you've listened to everything so far, you realize this journey isn't about techniques or tricks. It's about a new way of seeing, feeling, and touching with purpose, patience, and respect. It's about daring to face the invisible, to venture deep into the shadowed corridors of the soul. When you do, you awaken something in him that no superficial gesture ever could. Now, take a conscious breath. Reflect on this truth. To touch with intention and patience is to touch the very core of his being. To hold space without expectation is to unlock the deepest desire within. And that, my friend, is where genuine transformation begins. This isn't just about awakening desire in others. It's about awakening your own capacity to love, to see, to be silent, and in those moments, everything changes. You become a vessel of true connection, capable of igniting lasting flames. Are you ready to embrace this power? To be someone who doesn't just seek shortcuts, but dares to face the invisible. If so, remember, the real awakening isn't about what you do physically, it's about your intention, your presence, and your commitment to be fully there. Because in that stillness, in that patience, you hold the key to something far greater than fleeting desire. You unlock the depths of trust, soul, and eternal connection.